I'm gonna take these glasses off and hope for the best, because this is my third time filming this video. In today's video, we are going to be going over my top 5 books for 2024. Now, while these books did not all come out in 2024, some of these books were on my reading list for a long time, and I made a commitment earlier this year that I wanted to read 24 books. Well, I read 27 books, and the majority of those books were actually read in the latter part of the year. So from August until December, I want to say I read 24 of those 27 books. So if that gives you any idea of what I can accomplish for 2025, fingers crossed, we're gonna blow the 36 books that I have on my list out of the water next year. Now, while these are in no particular order of when I read the books, I will say that the first 4 are my 5-star reads for this year. And that's saying a lot, because I typically won't give 5 stars to just any book. You have to be pretty spectacular to get 5 stars. In fact, if I just thought you were like an okay book, you're probably getting a 3-star rating. It's like you weren't the worst, but you're not the best. So I'm gonna give you like middle grade. These first 4 books that I'm gonna tell you about, 5 stars. The first book on my list for 2024 was Weyward by Emilia Hart. This is actually the book that got me back into reading this year. I read it in February. I absolutely loved it. I loved the 3 timelines, the 3 different point of views of all of the Weyward women, and how each generation discovered their powers and also used those powers to get over some pretty intense things in their lives. So if you're looking for something that is more on the historical fiction, light fantasy, I would definitely recommend this book. It's not super fantasy in my opinion. It's more Green Witch oriented, which I really loved that aspect. The characters were really interesting, and like I said, I enjoyed having a 3 different timeline, 3 point of view throughout the entire book. So if that is something you think you'd be interested in, I would highly recommend this book to you. So the next book on my list that also got 5 stars this year was my very first book of the month pick. It was not a book of the month for when I started book of the month, so I'm a new book of the month club girly, and I ended up joining in August on a whim. I had one of those $5 book coupons, thought, why not? Let me just see. Let me just try it out, test the waters. I may not like any of it. Well, I didn't like any of the choices for August, but as a new member, if you don't like the current choices, they do let you go through the backlog and find something that you like for your first book. So with that, I went on a whim. I had heard really good things about Starling by Alix Harrow, and this book, let me tell you right now, I love this book. I love the characters in this book so much that I want a sequel. I don't know if that's possible, but I need a sequel. Basically, if you've never heard of this book, there is a main character, her name is Opal, and she is taking care of her brother who is still a minor. Their mom passed away a few years beforehand, and she works at the local tractor supply. She ends up getting herself fired and she needs a new job. She ends up being hired by the owner of the Starling house, who needed a maid. And so she spends her days cleaning this house, and the house itself has its own personality and it's calling to her and she can't figure out why. I don't want to give you too many spoilers, but there is romance involved as well. The owner of the house, his name is Arthur. He's our main male character, and he's a love interest that you wouldn't expect to fall in love with. He's not big and strong and brooding like all of these other fantasy guys. He's kind of depicted very like pale and skinny and just like not all that attractive. But let me tell you what, he was my book boyfriend. I absolutely adored his character so much. And I really like the story between those two characters as well. So if you want something that is kind of paranormal fantasy with a little bit of romance, but it's not spicy, you're definitely going to want to read this one. It's such a good read. It's a super fast read, and I highly recommend it around Halloween season. It's very appropriate. That's kind of when I read it, but I definitely gave this one 5 stars. The next book on my list was Witch of Wild Things by Raquel Vasquez Gilliland, and this book is cozy romance, cozy witchy romance, which I actually really enjoy. So another book similar in vibes that also ranked pretty high on my list this year was The Unfortunate Side Effects of Heartbreak and Magic by Brianne Randall. And it has very similar vibes to Witch of Wild Things, but the thing that I really liked about Witch of Wild Things that Unfortunate Side Effects of Magic didn't do is it focused a little bit more on this spicy love story that is between the main character and the main male character. I loved this story. She's trying to, her and her sisters are trying to find a cure for her grandmother's cancer, and they all have special magical powers, and they go on a quest to try to cure their grandma's cancer. And it is such a heartwarming, beautiful story, as well as a love story, that I absolutely fell in love. And I will be reading the next book in the story, which is about one of her other sisters, which is called Lightning in Her Hands. And that one I'm gonna save for next year, but just, you gotta read this one. This next book on my list is slightly controversial due to some recent drama regarding the author, but you know what? All of that aside, I was told earlier this year that I needed to read the ACOTAR series. And being that Beauty and the Beast was one of my favorite Disney movies of all time, I figured, hey, why not? I'll give it a go. I'll see what happens. Well, the first book didn't really get me. Like, if you've ever read ACOTAR, you know book 1 is nothing to write home about. It's just kind of like meh. And it definitely leaves you wanting like a little bit more. It's kind of spicy, but like it's just so Beauty and the Beast for me, like maybe a little bit Goblin King. It just didn't do it for me. Tamlin is not the male main character that I fell in love with, and I've also heard that a lot of other people don't like Tamlin either. But then you get to book 2. And that is where we meet Rysand. Well, we meet him in the first book, but we really learn about him in this book. So this is A Court of Mist and Fury. This is book 2 of the ACOTAR series by Sarah J. Maas. I know. It's a split 50-50 out there on fans of hers now, but I already have the books, guys. I'm gonna keep reading the books. I'm not gonna let opinions of the author sway me away from reading the books without, you know, an open mind. So in this book, we actually get to learn more about Rysand and Feyre's love / mating, which is really interesting. Hopefully that's not a spoiler for you. Yeah, I love this main male character so much. And like, he is what you want in a romance. He's a bad boy. He's got bat wings. Bat wings mean the size of the bat wings refer to the size of the you know what. But I love this story. I can't stop reading it. I'm not gonna stop reading it. In fact, book 3 is definitely on my list for 2025. Hopefully I will get through this series in the next few months, and I can make a decision on if I want to continue with any of the other SJ Maas universe series. But for now, it got me. I gave it 4.5 stars. so sue me. And then last but not least, my award for the best romantasy that I read this year. Again, it's not everybody's cup of tea. People can be haters. This is the one that really got me. Fourth Wing. And let me just say, this book made me a fantasy girly. I did not think that I was a fantasy girly. In fact, when I first started my reading journey last year, I only had thrillers, memoirs, and like paranormal books. That was it. I didn't have fantasy books. I didn't have romantasy books. This is the first romantasy I read, and this is what triggered all of it for me. Like this book right here. But not the romance per se. It's not really the reason why I kept reading. I love the world in this book. I love the dragons in this book. And honestly, I love the battles in this book. So I just want to keep reading for the action, not necessarily for the action, if you know what I mean. But I love this book. I am finishing Iron Flame right now because Onyx Storm comes out at the end of January. It's already on pre-order, but I know what everyone says about Iron Flame, and I will keep that review for another time. But get yourself at least through 50% of that book. If you are in it for the reasons that I'm in it, and it's not the romantasy aspect of the story, keep reading because eventually you get the things that you want. And the rest of it is just kind of like fluff in the second book. So I'm really praying and hoping that in Onyx Storm we get way more of the stuff that I love. We have to see. I've heard rumors, but I'm hoping for the best. This one was definitely a 5-star read for me. So that sums up my top 5 books of 2024. You should definitely let me know if any of these books were also on your top 5, or if they weren't, why, and what books were on your top 5? What books were on your top 10? What are you looking forward to for 2025? I would love to know all of the answers to these questions. So if you want to leave me a comment down below, I would love to hear from you. Also, go ahead and ring the bell, like, and subscribe, because we're all book besties here. And good luck to you for your 2025 reading goals.